if you want to make God laugh, you've got to tell him your plans. And I planned to do this video a long time ago when the fight was announced, but unfortunately things didn't go according to plan, so now I'm doing it a few days just before it happens. And the reason why I wanted to do it early was because I could get a lot more views, so there's my crafty little plan there. Anyways, excuse me while I belch. Right, UFC 134. Very excited for that card. Lots of interesting fights, lots of intrigue built up around the main event and the semi-main event. And while they're at it, with the with the buzz that's being generated from this show and the things leading into the show, you also have an opportunity to create some stars. So hopefully the Bulgarian fighter, I can't remember his name, who's fighting Lewis Kane Jr., hopefully he can have a good showing and they can do something with him after that. And hopefully Ross Pearson and Barboza, which I think is going to be the dark horse for fight of the night, hopefully they get something out of this and they can really build on those two. Ross Pearson's always reminded me, and I know a lot of people on the internet call him this, but a younger English version of Wanderlei Silva with the way he strikes and his tenacity. So I can see why people would make that comparison and call him Baby Wanderlei. So hopefully it will be a good opportunity for those two to come out and, actually get some momentum for a change. Now, I'm going to talk about the main card. I don't usually talk about the prelims very often, but I will say that if you're going to watch the prelims, do it. You can usually have a lot of fun. It's got a good Brazil versus the rest of the world theme to it, so that's always pretty exciting. But the first fight that I want to talk about is Brendan Schaub versus Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Now, Brendan Schaub, I don't know if people have realised what his game plan is as a fighter or as a businessman, but I noticed this during the Gonzaga fight. And then I noticed this again when he fought Mirko Cro Cop. And I can kind of see his pattern of thinking. And some people don't like him, think he's a cocky little prick coming off of The Ultimate Fighter. And, ooh, I'm Mr. Football Player. But what he's doing right now is very intelligent. Now, you look at it like this as a businessman. Beat Gabriel Gonzaga, beat Mirko Cro Cop, and if he potentially beats Rodrigo Nogueira, that really builds his name up, which means more big fights down the line, more money. He can spend that money on better facilities, better training. He can really finance his career if he, continues to take this route. So this whole legend killer-like gimmick that he's building up for himself, or reputation that he's building up for himself, is a good thing. Now, looking at this fight individually and how I see it going, Nogueira is at the twilight of his career. I don't want to be the asshole that comes out and says, well, he's finished and done, but okay. Nogueira fought Randy Couture, and that was a fantastic fight, and I know a lot of people who think that was the best MMA fight they've ever seen. He then fought Cain Velasquez, and the Cain Velasquez fight reinforced something that I had believed for a while, that Nogueira has been in the wars. He's had so much damage, to here on your chin, and there's only a certain amount of punches you can take on your chin until it starts to have an effect on you. And this isn't like in Japan, where they will willingly let you get hit on the chin and get back up, willingly let you get hit in the chin and get back up. Once you're out, you're out. And when he lost to Frank Mir, I know a lot of people blame that on the staph infection, but then when he fought Cain Velasquez and Cain just wiped him out in the way that he did, that was very telling. And we've seen this very familiar tale now in the sport of MMA as the sport's evolving. A lot of the legends and the pioneers of that era are starting to be phased out. We've just seen what happened with Wanderlei Silva. We've just seen Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell. And the question coming into this fight is Nogueira the next person that's going to be phased out? I have a ton of respect for Nogueira, and I'm not by any means being a douche when I say this, but it looks more than likely that that could be the case. Brendan Schaub fought Gabriel Gonzaga, and I felt Gonzaga fought very badly in that fight. Ever since he got that knockout on Mirko Cro Cop, in my opinion, and I compare him to other guys in his weight class, so this is why I'm making this statement, I feel that he is just trying to throw these telegraphed kicks and hoping that one of them will land and have another Cro Cop-like knockout, instead of working on your overall game, but not forgetting what brings you to the table, your grappling, your jiu-jitsu, which always made you dangerous. And I felt that was almost a shoo-in for Brendan Schaub to win, and that's what happened. And then Brendan Schaub fought Mirko Cro Cop, and in my opinion, Cro Cop has always had a suspect chin, and I've always felt his motivation in the UFC has kind of lacked. He's not the force that he used to be, and Brendan Schaub knocked him out, and I wasn't surprised by that. The younger, hungrier fighter won. Now, I don't think motivation is going to be a problem with Nogueira, but I do think that the fact that he's been in the wars, as I've said before, is a huge factor, and this may be... it's a hard fight, but I will not be surprised if Brendan Schaub wins. But on the other hand, if Brendan makes a mistake, he's a young rookie, and if Nogueira can capitalize on that, you might have a situation where Brendan Schaub knocks Nogueira down and then just runs straight into his guard, and if he does that, that's a huge mistake. That being said, coming from Greg Jackson's camp, I don't see Greg not preparing Brendan to do that. I see Greg Jackson really enforcing, being careful inside Nogueira's guard if you end up there. So who knows what can happen there. Now the other fight I really want to talk about, Forrest Griffin and Mauricio Shogun Rua. I'm going to tell you right now, I wanted to see this rematch for years. Ever since the first fight in 2007, and what happened and everything that led into that fight and the aftermath, I really wanted to see this rematch. I remember when this fight was announced and everyone thought Forrest Griffin had done something wrong and that Dana White was punishing him by putting him in there with Shogun, because Shogun was such a heavy favourite. Shogun was like the uncrowned champion of 205. He was, in a lot of people's minds, the number one ranked light heavyweight in the world, and he wasn't even a world champion, which is saying something. And people just felt, man, what are you doing to Forrest Griffin? What are you doing? Is Forrest upset Dana White? Is he pissed off the UFC? And I mean, I expected Shogun to beat him too. I actually did not expect Forrest to win this fight. Forrest's got a suspect chin. Sometimes he can lack, in the mental game sometimes, and I thought Shogun was going to beat him. And then that fight takes place, and it was a completely different fight to what I expected. Forrest really put the pressure on him. Forrest wore him out. Forrest made him tired. Forrest was landing a lot. Forrest was doing very well on the ground. Forrest was doing quite well on the feet. Shogun just looked like he didn't want to be there. And a lot of people have said and speculated and made accusations as to why Shogun didn't look that good. Some people say it was the injuries that he was coming off of at the time, and I think that probably was a factor. And I know a lot of people have also said, and alright, I'll go on further, but a lot of people have said that they reckon that Shogun was taking performance enhancers. Now, I'm not making that accusation myself, but I do know that in Pride and in Japan, the drug testing and the drug issues were a lot different, and they were a lot more relaxed about those kinds of things. And I will say this, I did notice a lot of guys from Pride, when they came over to the UFC and came to America, with the drug testing policies they had there, not necessarily taking steroids, but things that are performance enhancers, I noticed a big difference in them physically. Wanderlei Silva's physique looked very different when he was in the UFC in comparison to when he was in Japan fighting for Pride. I felt Shogun looked a little bit different then, but it could be actually the surgeries themselves. And Mirko Cro Cop, when he came into the UFC, one of my first thoughts was, wow, he looks a lot smaller. Anyways, we've seen what happens. When Shogun loses, he always comes back very strong. We've seen that. That's been the history of the story of his career. I mean, after the loss to Forrest Griffin, we saw what happened. Forrest went on to win a world title. Shogun was out for a long time, fought Mark Coleman, didn't look too good, but I mean, technique-wise, he looked fine. It was just his conditioning and his cardiovascular shape. He didn't look like he was in 100% fight shape against Mark Coleman. When he fought Chuck Liddell, he looked a lot better and knocked him out. And then he fought Lyoto Machida and surprised a lot of people with the game plan that he implemented, and in my opinion, won that fight. Then he had the rematch with Machida and just finished him off, and then was injured again, had some surgeries, fought John Jones in that very interesting fight, and John completely dominated Shogun in a way that I never expected. And it was a sad thing to see, because I am a fan of Shogun, and if you watch the UFC blogs, there's a sad sight of just Shogun just looking completely deflated, and he's just got his head down like that, and he's just walking just very, very sadly into his locker room. It's just the back of him, but you can almost read the expression just on the aura that he's giving off, and it was just quite an interesting thing to see. Now, he's got a shot at redemption in a lot of ways, in more ways than one, fighting Forrest Griffin. Can he do it this time? What I do know is that Shogun is back with his old coach Rafael Cordeiro. I know that he's training with Wanderlei Silva, and I know that he's back with some of the people that brought him to prominence in the first place, and that could have an effect on him there. I mean, he's got a lot of inside information when you think about it. Wanderlei Silva was a fighter that trained with Forrest Griffin at Extreme Couture, so hopefully the knowledge and the experience of sparring with Forrest has rubbed off on Wanderlei, and he can teach and implement some information to Shogun to get him ready. I would favour Shogun to win this fight because he always comes back strong after a loss. I think the hungrier fighter and the fighter who wants it the most is the one that's going to win. That being said, Forrest Griffin has looked a lot better. I mean, a lot of people have called him a very sloppy, just brawler at times, but I felt that he looked very good against Rich Franklin. It wasn't the most exciting fight in the world, but I felt that he's improved on his wrestling a bit, and he's improved on his ground and pound. And I was actually quite impressed when he had Rich Franklin down in the manner that he did, and you could tell he'd spent some time working on that aspect there. And Shogun doesn't necessarily have the best takedown defense, and if Forrest can implement and go for a takedown, he could, and put pressure on him inside his guard, he could do very well. Forrest's going to have a lot of confidence fighting Shogun. He's already got the victory over him, and he subbed him at that. Forrest never comes in out of shape. That's the one thing I'll always give him credit for. He always shows up in shape and ready to go 5 rounds, 6 rounds, 8 rounds. He can go for as long as he wants. And if Forrest puts that kind of pressure on Shogun, is he going to break Shogun? Is it going to get to Shogun mentally? If he does that, then I can see him winning the fight. It's a tough one to call. I almost feel like Two-Face wanting to flick a coin to determine who's going to win that. But if you put a gun to my head and you ask me who I think's going to win, I think Shogun. And I think probably by knockout. Now, the final fight of the card that I really want to talk about is the fight that interests a lot of people. It's Yushin Okami versus Anderson Silva. The big rematch, again, from their Rumble on the Rock fight. I think that was when they fought. Was it Rumble on the Rock? It was probably another show, but feel free to correct me if I've gone wrong on that. Now, a lot of things have happened since then. Anderson has developed and evolved into perhaps the greatest middleweight mixed martial artist in the world today and in the history of the sport. He is perhaps the best pound for pound fighter in the world. He has just been completely dominant, whatever weight class he fights in, whether it's light heavyweight or as a middleweight. He's been absolutely dominant there, and it's to the point almost where there are very few guys I want to see him fight because I just know the outcome of the fight right away. I can tell you what Anderson's going to win, what Anderson's going to win, what Anderson's going to win. And coming off that knockout of Vitor Belfort, I think that's a lot of momentum that Anderson's riding, and the victory over Chael Sonnen. Now, Yushin Okami is a good wrestler. He's got fantastic takedown defense, and he's got very good at getting takedowns himself too. And I think that he's not a stupid man. He's watched Anderson versus Dan Henderson. He's watched Anderson versus Chael Sonnen, and it's no secret what Yushin's going to do. I can see Yushin just working for a single or working for a double, pressing Anderson up by the cage and trying to go for a takedown. But one of the things with Yushin Okami's style, to me, is he's always been very wary, always been a very cautious fighter. And I think that might be a factor in the fight with how Yushin performs, because now that we've just seen that knockout of Vitor Belfort, that's going to put ideas in Okami's head, and that might shake him in terms of confidence, and that might make him very, very, very cautious. And it could be a disaster in the sense that if Yushin is too cautious, we might get a similar fight to Anderson and Thales Leites, or Anderson and Patrick Cote, or Anderson and Damian Maia, where Anderson just doesn't show up because of it. So I think a lot of people are just hoping that Yushin really just charges in and goes for a double, but he's got to be careful because you don't want to get hit by Anderson. At the same hand, I think Anderson has the the abilities to win. I think it's a perfect fight for Anderson to win, because I also feel that when you put pressure on Yushin Okami on the feet, much like Rich Franklin did, and you start moving forward and start, landing shots, Yushin backs up quite a bit. That's what Nate Marquardt failed to do when he fought Yushin Okami. In fact, he moved back and tried to throw an overhand right, and that was the biggest mistake he made, not winning. When you move forward, and history has shown, and you put pressure on Okami, he starts to freeze a bit, and I think that's how Anderson can beat Yushin Okami. I would favour Anderson in winning that fight now, but who knows? That's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a case where this could either be the best fight on the card, or it could be the worst fight on the card. Anyways, I have gone on and 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 on enough. My mouth's getting dry. I need to do another video in a few minutes. Write some comments and let me know what you think. Who do you think's going to win? Do you think that we're going to have a dark horse in terms of fight of the night? Because usually that happens. Is this the chance for a guy like a Ross Pearson to really step up on a big card? And do you like the theme of a Brazil versus the rest of the world card? I think that makes it a little more interesting. I tell you what, I'm expecting the Brazilian fans to really provide an atmosphere that we haven't seen in a while. UFC atmosphere is always very good, but the Brazilian fans, if you've watched football and you've seen the events, they're very, very passionate and very, very vocal, and I can imagine that that's going to play into the show. It's also going to be interesting to see how Chael Sonnen is received, as he's going to be there. It's almost going to be like a Bret Hart, a Steve Austin in Canada during the Bret Hart feud kind of feel, so that will be great. Anyways, write some comments. Who do you think's going to win? Who do you think's going to lose? And where do you see people going after this? Let me know in some texts or any other kind of comments. And rate and subscribe. And I will see you all in a few minutes.